I've been a part of other DAOs, which basically the mechanism by which they kind of find consensus is they all have a Discord group, and there'll be like emoji voting that's happening. So it's like, hey, we want to spend $500 to throw this party, thumbs up, thumbs down, or abstain. And that can be a fine way of coordinating, let's say, a dozen people. But Orange DAOs, we have over 1,000 members, and so very quickly these types of hey, if you were there and you saw that Discord message, it becomes inscalable to actually rely on people to find these kinds of messages.
All right, this is another episode of the Form Your Own podcast from Founders Pack. Is becoming an alliteration, so I'm having a hard time pronouncing anything. Today, my guest is James Sinka of the Orange DAO. James, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thank you so much for having me.
I reached out to you, but for people that don't know, who is James Sinka?
So I'm a scientist turned startup founder. My background is in chemistry and materials engineering. I've started 2 scientific companies based on research that I've done. Since then, I have been helping other researchers and scientists figure out how to start their own companies. And recently, I helped to build out Orange DAO, which is a group of over 1,000 YCombinator alumni that have banded together to find and invest in the best Web3 startups. And by having a DAO-like structure, we can create mechanisms or incentives to coordinate 1,000 individual people to do things like find the best deals, help companies with whatever it might be. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's branding, maybe it's sales, go to market, and really find consensus on what we think are going to be the really big game-changing companies as an entity. And then we submit that information over to the investment team, which is consistent of 3 GPs who actually do make the executive decisions. So you can kind of think about us as a venture DAO, but with the brains, the minds, the passion of 1,000 YC alumni.
This is the primary reason I reached out to you, because I'm very curious about the DAO. I've written, obviously, and not completely released yet, my new book called Form Your Own Pack. And in it, I say, form collaborative ventures. And part of that is to say, share technology, talent, data, and relationships. And then I envisioned when I was writing it originally, like, hey, there's going to be some software to do this. And then this thing called a DAO happened. So for people that aren't maybe used to it, what is a DAO?
DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And really, it's a collective of people that all agree to a shared set of rules. These rules are typically enshrined or inscribed into a blockchain, so that way everyone can see what the rules are. And then you execute contracts or agreements based on those preset rules that allow everyone to know what it is they are going to get compensated for giving certain resources. So whether it's time, in the case of Orange DAO, it's scouting deals, it's helping to write due diligence documents, et cetera, et cetera. And so really at the end of the day, it's sort of an evolution of where we had the C Corp or LLC corporation structures, but meant to be used more flexibly than that. So you don't necessarily need a DAO if you're going to start a company. Perhaps you just have a group of friends that all want to decide, hey, what are we going to stream about? What kind of a podcast do we want to write? What kind of games are we trying to play, et cetera? And you just want to have as clear of a voting mechanism to basically enshrine democratic principles that you really think are effective for finding group consensus. DAOs as a whole are one of the mechanisms of organizing to collecting those people, along with writing out exactly what the rules of the game are, so everyone knows how to play fairly and evenly together.
I love it. And that I think, if I compare that to what you mentioned, for example, like an LLC, those are usually governed by paper, which the difficulty is someone has to go read the thing to decide what we're allowed to do and not to do.
Yeah.
What is your experience? Is this the first DAO, first of all, that you formed?
So I would say, yeah, this is the first DAO that I've been on the founding team on. I've been a part of other DAOs, which basically the mechanism by which they kind of find consensus is they all have a Discord group, and there'll be like emoji voting that's happening. So it's like, hey, we want to spend $500 to throw this party, thumbs up, thumbs down, or abstain. And that can be a fine way of coordinating, let's say, a dozen people. but Orange DAO's, we have over 1,000 members, and so very quickly these types of hey, if you were there and you saw that Discord message, it becomes inscalable to actually rely on people to find these kinds of messages. So instead, we use different tools, something called Snapshot, to allow us to actually put up proposals and then have folks vote with their MetaMask or whatever Ethereum wallet they have that hosts their membership token in. So we know that essentially there's no one that can create fake accounts or double post or spam or whatever it is that you might be able to kind of get away with in a Discord group if you just pretend like you're 2 or 3 accounts, because everyone has their membership token verified. Not just who they are and what they voted for, but that you can trust in the results that come out of the voting process, because only verified people can vote. So you don't have a way to rig an election or a decision. You're actually going to find consensus. Oh, I lost you there.
That's because there was a jet flying over. Literally, I saw a jet go from here to here. So sorry,
Yeah.
for a sec.
Nice.
So Snapshot is the platform that lets you do the voting, and then that you're saying works with MetaMask. So what you've done is you've created this organization with all the rules, and then the tokens are basically like the units that people hold, and that gives them the right to vote.
Correct. So
Cool.
so there's a double structure here. So when someone first joins Orange DAO, they get an orange gem, and that gem is a verification that they are indeed a YCombinator alumni. So that's basically the ticket to entry. And with that ticket to entry, you have access to the snapshot, you have access to the Discord, you have access to making proposals on chain of what things people can vote on. Now, the second piece is actually how the votes are weighted. And that is measured in terms of the amount of orange tokens that someone owns. And so then the question becomes, how do you get orange tokens? And orange tokens are rewarded in proportion to the amount of tasks that you do that ultimately benefit the mission of the fund, which is to build a really good venture DAO. So again, that'd be scouting deals, providing portfolio support, writing custom software, doing marketing, all those kinds of things. They have a certain amount of orange tokens that are rewarded, anywhere from, let's say, 500 to 10,000. And now when you actually go into a voting process, we have weighted voting. So the people who've been contributing more time, more effort, more resources to the DAO obviously have a greater share of the say of where this goes. But in order to prevent giant whales, as they're called in the crypto space, so people who have large holdings, from completely controlling the direction of the DAO, everyone's vote is you take the square root of it. It's called quadratic voting. Oh. And what this means is the larger you have your tokens, you have to basically, you are non-linearly compensated for your vote. So if you have one person with 100,000 tokens and 5 people each with 10,000 tokens, you have a disparity of 5,000 to 100,000. But you have to take the square root of each when you do vote. So those 5 people could actually have their idea passed, even if it was opposed by 100,000 whale, because you take the square root of each. And so the person with 100,000 doesn't actually have
off a little bit of like the power of the weight of that vote. It's almost,
that's exactly right.
Is that the logic behind 4.0 as the grade point average? Like, I've never understood that.
I have no idea, if I'm to be honest.
I'm gonna look into that.
Yeah.
Now very curious, because you say that makes sense, which it kind of levels it a little bit. So
yeah, there's a lot of game theory that's been explored, particularly by like folks in the Ethereum community, and I believe the Gitcoin community as well. They're the first group that I've seen has implemented quadratic voting, and we recognized really quickly, hey, it'll be unfair for people who joined at the very beginning of Orange DAO to overpower anyone that comes in 3, 6, 12 months later. And so we needed to maintain some amount of agency for people who to still have the ability to move the boat and influence the direction of the DAO.
Very interesting. And then how easy was it, just out of curiosity, to actually set it up the first time, like set up your contract and everything? Did you have to program it, or did you use a platform?
Yeah, so I actually wasn't part of that team. I'm non-technical, right? As a chemist, right. I don't also know how to write code. I only have one set of expertise there. But the team that did put this together had to do a mixture of both. Okay. Like I mentioned, there are some off-the-shelf tools you can use, like snapshots. So you don't have to build your own voting system. Yep. And we use MetaMask, and there's another multi finance is a program that actually allows us to make transactions on the blockchain in a voted way. So we basically used as much off-the-shelf software as we possibly could and wrote as little custom code as we had to. There still was some that happened, but generally, when you're first starting off in an organization, you want to be able to be as agile and swift as you possibly can be. And so to the extent that you can just pull components off the shelf instead of building them in-house, the sooner you get to actually launch something and the sooner you get the learnings from launching that thing. Because the later you wait to launch, the more you're going to end up building something that perhaps people don't actually want or need to use.
I feel like in general, Web3 is at the hobbyist phase still.
I agree. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I liken it to there was a time in the world when there were computers and there was a thing called the Apple II, and that was the thing that drove Apple's value. And then, they came out with the Mac and all this stuff, but it didn't really work initially. But then there was iOS, the iTunes, the App Store, and the iPhone and the iPad. And that was like a true platform, and anybody could come up with an idea and make it happen. So I feel like we're in the Apple II phase of Web3.
Probably, and hopefully they don't cut the Apple II funding like Apple originally did,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you say that, and that's what I think. Like, it may go through that because I think Web 0.0 went through that, right? But it's kind of like Web 1.10 was like, okay, so this is crazy, this is nonsense. And then Web 2 became useful because browsers improved, mobile happened,
Definitely.
we had SaaS, right? So
Definitely.
I'm be shocked if this doesn't happen with blockchain. Anyways, I want to be conscious of your time. I really appreciate the insight. I think that's really valuable. If you had, I don't know why there's a jet. I'm really worried that there's a jet going by my house.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe you can start getting private flights. You just like jump off on your roof, hold onto a wing, and you get to wherever you gotta go.
Shoot. So if you had advice for any other founders that are maybe looking at either DAOs or in general, if you can only give one piece of advice in this area, what would it be?
I would say it's most important to understand what you are trying to do and why you need blockchain to do that thing. In my experience, I've seen a lot of people who just slap Web3 or a token or blockchain onto a project they're already building. And not only does it just add complexity, but it also confuses the founding team and customers as to what the vision is. But if you have something that's very simple and very straightforward, it allows not just, again, you, but also customers and investors to rally around that singular vision instead of you trying to do everything all at once and kind of have these multimodal, like, oh, and this and that and this and that. It really just ends up muddying the waters for what your true value proposition and the true difference you can make in the world is. And you can always go back and add blockchain later if you think there's some really innovative idea, but always focus down as narrowly as you need to. And if you don't need to use blockchain, don't use blockchain.
I love that advice, and I keep thinking the same thing, which is, the way we get past this era is we need to think in terms of this is like iOS or this is like Java. It's a development tool, and that's I think what it's got to get to. It's great that it unlocks people's imaginations, but I think there are
Sure.
real applications, and you've given a great example of one that I'm really excited about. So I want to acknowledge you for that, and I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it. And I probably can't get in because I haven't been through YCombinator. So
Not yet, not yet. We eventually have it's on a roadmap to bring in non-YC alumni.
oh, there you go.
But the reason we started it this way, and this might be a tip for folks considering building their own communities, is you want to be able to vet that you have high quality people to start, and that there's a certain bar of trust that you can establish, knowing, hey, these are other YC alumni folk, before you figure out, okay, where are the kinks that need to get worked through in order to actually scale and bring other people that maybe you have less trust in, but now you have an established network, an established system, and you can handle some stress coming from other places.
Well, and I think I shared with you like the goal of Founders Pack is to help founders of scalable ventures, and that's part of that is the role of community. So in your case, the role of community is right at the core of what you're doing, I think. But
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
could probably answer that. What has the role of community been in the growth of this?
Oh my goodness. I mean, we would not be able to deliver the value that we claim we can without the Y Combinator community behind us. So when a Web3 startup comes to Orange DAO and looks for funding, the reason they're coming to us is because they know that they're going to be met by a handful of people who have some domain expertise in exactly what they're building. And as you know, Web3 can be used for all kinds of different types of projects, whether it's enterprise software, If you're working in DeFi, if you're working like at the protocol layer one level, if you're working in like crowdfunding or science or whatever it is, the beauty of having an organization of over 1,000 alumni is you can get paired with people who have been in your shoes and who care about the problem space that you're solving because they've lived it themselves. Whereas, if you have just a team of 10, 20, 30 people, the likelihood that you'll have several players with experience overlapping in that exact industry is going to be a lot lower than if you have 1,000 experienced seasoned people who are excited to help.
I love it. That is great to hear, and that's great feedback. And I'm encouraged by what you're doing because I'm going to follow your coattails a little bit. And I've always thought that the DAO was the right way to do part of Founders Pack.
Mm.
And I'm going to learn more as I go. You kind of pointed me a couple directions that are really interesting, and I think that what we'll get to is something similar to you, where we have a great community where they participate, and it's not just like a passive community. It's like, here's the active community to help each other scale, and that's
Definitely.
what our goal is. So, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, and who would you like to get?
Ooh. Okay, so if you're building anything in Web3 and you're at a stage where you're looking for pre-seed funding, you can go to orangedao.xyz. That's orangedao.xyz. And the best place to follow up with me, if you're interested in talking general DAO stuff, I really love people that are trying to mix blockchain and science. That space, that ecosystem is called DeSci, or Decentralized Science, playing off of
Oh, great!
DeFi.
I love
If you're
that.
working in that space, please reach out. I'm on Twitter at James Sinka. And yeah, Twitter's the best place to get a hold of me.
Amazing. All right. So the final thing is,
Yeah.
if you watched any of the episodes, when we have interesting people on the podcast, we like you to nominate other interesting people. We've talked to a lot of YCombinator founders, mostly in the most
Yeah.
cohorts, but not all. Some are or have been in prior cohorts, or investors. So we typically talk to investors or founders of scalable ventures. So who would you, James, like to nominate as a future guest of the podcast?
Interesting. Yeah, I've got a friend named Mike Dubrovsky in mind. He's working on his Y Combinator project, which he's still building, is a biosensor to let people detect or measure their biomarkers at home. And that's helped me a lot to measure, okay, what kinds of things am I doing that might be impacting and spiking my stress levels, specifically my cortisol. I saw as an example that when I got COVID, um, my testosterone went down and my stress went way up. And
Oh,
so
good.
it's kind of interesting to see, at least for me, I would bucket myself in the biohacker space to see what kind of tips and tricks, levers I can pull to help optimize my health. Because when I am healthy, I think I'm able to perform better. I'm able to show up, be my best self, and actually make the impact I want to see in the world.
That's amazing. And you said it's Mike Dabrowski, is that?
Yeah, happy to send you his email and follow up
Wonderful.
after this.
Mike, you've
Yes,
been nominated as a future guest by James. James, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.
pleasure to meet you, Michael. Thank you.